In fact, every diabetes association, the American Diabetes Association, the Canadian Diabetes Association, they all said it was chronic and progressive. That if you got it, you had it for life. It had no possibility of reversal. I said, that's stupid. That's one of the biggest lies in medicine.
Today on Frontline Health, we chat with Dr. Jason Fung, a kidney doctor from Canada who pioneered effective treatment for type 2 diabetes using intermittent fasting.
The first couple of times I proposed a study, the research ethics board at my hospital shot it down. They said, you can't do that. You can't fast people. I'm like, why not? They're like, because we know it's bad. I'm like, show me the evidence. And they're like, we don't have evidence, but we have our dietitian who says it's bad, so you can't do it.
In 2012, Dr. Fung co-founded the first intermittent fasting clinic in North America.
And as soon as I started using it, I saw just these amazing cases. All of a sudden, within a month, some of them had completely gotten rid of their type 2 diabetes.
This episode is sponsored by Wisconsin Elderberry Enterprises. Get 20% off with promo code HEALTH20. More on this American company later. In America, there's about 37 million people living with diabetes. Another 96 million have prediabetes. It's a condition where blood sugar is higher than normal. And according to Cleveland Clinic, there's a 50% chance that people with prediabetes will develop type 2 diabetes over the next 10 years. That's 96 million people. It's a huge number. It means 1 in 3 adults are at risk of diabetes. And until 2 years ago, the American Diabetes Association did not believe that diabetes was reversible. Why didn't they believe it? Well, because the proposed therapy for it challenged the popular health view. Back in the 90s, things kind of turned upside down in the dieting world. The US Department of Agriculture came out with the nation's first food pyramid. At the top we had fats. They were to be used sparingly. This was the prevailing diet dogma at the time. Meanwhile, carbs formed the foundation of this American diet. And the food industry rolled along, replacing fats with sugar. Now, sugar was also at the top of this pyramid. It was supposed to be used sparingly, but somehow everyone ignored that, and grocery shelves flourished with processed, sweetened, fat-free carbs that were supposed to be good for us. And they were good at keeping us hungry. And so came the boom of grazers, eating small meals 6 to 10 times a day. And with this came a perception that taking a long break from food and experiencing hunger was bad for you.
So when you talk about fasting, somewhere around the sort of 90s, it grew into this negative connotation from a health standpoint. And it came out because people started to eat a ultra low fat diet. So in the 70s, people said fat is bad for you, so don't eat, bacon and eggs for breakfast, eat white bread and jam because it's low fat. It's pure carbs and sugar, but it's low fat. When they ate the white bread and jam, because it didn't keep them full, they would sort of get ravenously hungry by 10:30 in the morning. They'd go look for a low fat muffin. Then, again, ravenously hungry by lunch, eat a big plate of pasta, and so on. So people were eating much more frequently than before, and therefore thought that this was a good thing. So therefore, if eating 6-10 times a day, and if you remember, going back a few years, that was sort of the standard medical advice. Eat multiple small meals throughout the day. And then there's a whole bunch of studies that were published by the breakfast food companies that said breakfast is the most important meal of the day. There is actually no scientific basis for saying that. There's no good studies that have really shown any sort of benefit to eating breakfast. But, advertising dollars go a long way. So when you repeat it often enough, it becomes sort of dogma. And there's other ways to do it. So if you're a breakfast food company, for example, you sponsor dietitians conferences. So if you look at any conference of dietitians, they'll usually be sponsored by a whole host of processed food companies, including a lot of breakfast food companies. So you start sponsoring those and putting speakers that tell you breakfast is the most important meal of the day. And pretty soon you start believing that. So that's how it sort of became, fasting became this sort of positive thing to this very negative thing. And it was very funny because people were saying, well, to lose weight, you have to eat all the time. And if you actually stop to think about that, you have to think, how is that actually going to work? because from a medical standpoint, when you're eating, your body's going to store calories, right, as body fat or as sugar. It's only when you're not eating that you're actually going to pull those calories back out. So when you're eating, sort of like if you go to the grocery store, it's like, suppose you have a refrigerator that's so full that you can't even close it. And you say, the way to empty out your refrigerator is to go to Costco 6 times a day. It's like, you'd say, what are you, insane? Like, that's actually the opposite of what you need to do. Like, your fridge is too full. Why are you going to Costco 6 times a day? You shouldn't even be going at all. And the advice is just completely opposite of what you should be doing. It's the same thing. If your body's stores of calories are so high, that is, if you're overweight, if your blood glucose is high, you have too much stored calories. That's the way their body stores calories. Then you say you should eat all the time. And what people don't realize is that this whole idea that you should eat 10 times a day never came from the doctors. In fact, the doctors tell people to fast all the time. Like, you go for surgery, you need to fast. You do after surgery, you need to fast. You do a colonoscopy, you need to fast. You do fasting blood work, you need to fast. So every day I'm telling people to fast for various reasons, right? Usually, medical reasons. And nothing bad happens. So why would something bad happen if you do fasting for weight loss? Like, what's the difference? And as soon as I started using it, I saw just these amazing cases. People with type 2 diabetes that I had been treating for 20 years, all of a sudden, within a month, some of them had completely gotten rid of their type 2 diabetes. So it completely reversed that diabetes. And if you don't have diabetes, then you're going to be at much lower risk of diabetic kidney disease, diabetic eye disease, heart attack, stroke. So it wasn't just some trivial thing.
But convincing the medical establishment that fasting was an effective therapy for diabetes was not going to be easy. But first, let me tell you about the sponsor of this episode, Wisconsin Elderberry Enterprises. Did you know that Hippocrates, the father of Western medicine, called the elderberry plant his medicine chest? But today, the elderberry you buy at your local health store, in vast majority, comes from abroad. That means they have to be dried or powdered before they make it here. And the problem with that is the potency of the elderberry goes down. So this company actually uses fresh elderberries that they grow right here on their Wisconsin farm. Everything here is handpicked, and when they make the elderberry extracts, they put them into these convenient single-serve packets. They're easy to store, easy to take on the road, and very easy to use. But why elderberries? What are they good for? It's a powerful antioxidant that is rich in this compound called quercetin. It helps your body to detox from all kinds of toxins. It also supports your immune system. A number of studies suggest quercetin may help protect against heart disease and even cancer. And right now you can get this elderberry ultimate packet at 20% off. Use promo code HEALTH20 at wisconsinelderberry.com. When you support our sponsors, you support our work, so thank you.
The first couple of times I proposed a study, the research ethics board at my hospital shot it down. They said, you can't do that. You can't fast people. I'm like, why not? They're like, because we know it's bad. I'm like, show me the evidence. And they're like, we don't have evidence, but we have our dietitian who says it's bad, so you can't do it. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm doing it anyway. I'm just want to publish the results. And they're saying, no, you can't. It's funny because I said, I'm doing it anyway because clinically I can prescribe that for patients because this is an intervention that I think will make them better. So therefore I have the license to tell people to do this. So I was doing it in my clinic anyway. And I was saying that the research is just to show so that I can share with people my experience. That's it. Whether you tell me yes or no, I'm doing it for my patients. I just want to be able to share it with people. And they're saying, no, you can't do that. I said, why? And they're like, well, it's too new and people might believe you. I'm like, what? It's too new? Like, isn't this research? Like, aren't we supposed to be finding new stuff? Just like, because people might believe me? It's like, that's the whole point, like this to stimulate discussion. So the whole research world was quite uninterested. In fact, was really wanted to block all kinds of sort of new ideas. And that's one of the things that holds people back is that in the universities and stuff, they have certain ideas which are sort of sanctioned and certain ideas which are not sanctioned. So fasting at that time was not sanctioned. Therefore, you couldn't do anything. So instead of that, then I started to just write a blog. I said, this is what I think, right? This is the studies. I'm showing the science. And of course, it got a lot of people are very interested in it because it made a lot of sense. It's sort of like the emperor's new clothes, right? Once somebody points it out, then you can think, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Like if people in the 1970s finished eating at 6 p.m. and ate breakfast at 8 a.m., that's a 14-hour fast that everybody in America did every day without thinking about it. So 14 hours people were fasting. If you're a bad boy, got sent to bed without dinner, you're fasting for 20 hours. No problems. No bad things happen to those kids other than hopefully they learn their lessons, right? But the point is that we went from everybody in the 70s doing 14 to 20 hours without much problems to, oh, you shouldn't even go 20 minutes without stuffing a muffin in your mouth, right? And that's healthy. And so now you have studies, for example, a study came out just a few months ago in terms of type 2 diabetes. And they used intermittent fasting or a various form called time-restricted eating, and they put 50% of their patients into remission. So 50% of the patients. Yeah, this is crazy. It's like 50% of the patients, if you treat them the way that we had been taught to treat them, would still have diabetes. And you're talking about like 100 million patients, right, in the United States, right? So 50 million of them could be potentially put into reversal with intermittent fasting. And you think about it, okay, so intermittent fasting, all you're doing is you're not eating for a certain period of time, and you're letting your blood sugar is too high, so you're going to let your body burn down the sugar. It's all natural. There's no drugs. It's a dietary treatment that has been used for thousands of years. It's free. What's the downside?
It actually saves you money.
Exactly. You save money. You know, if you think about it from a public health standpoint, the whole thing is completely like why there's so much resistance from universities predominantly and academic centers is mind-boggling, although it's mostly that universities and stuff, ivory towers like that, I always think that if they didn't come up with it, then it's stupid, right? That's generally how they think. So since they didn't come up with it, it must be stupid because otherwise we would have recommended it already. Well, they can't face that, right? It's real tough for them to face that there are smart things to do that they didn't come up with. In fact, every diabetes association, the American Diabetes Association, the Canadian Diabetes Association, they all said it was chronic and progressive. That you got it, you had it for life, it had no possibility of reversal. I said, that's stupid. That's one of the biggest lies in medicine. And I wrote about it in 2018. And it took them a couple of years, but again, having forced that conversation, in 2021, the American Diabetes Association now put out criteria for remission, which it had never done for the previous 30 years. It took Diabetes Canada until 2022 to say that, hey, yes, it is a reversible disease. It's like, gee, you think? Like everybody knew it already. Every patient for the last 25 years, every doctor, every nurse knew that if you lost weight, your type 2 diabetes would get better. So therefore, why call it chronic and progressive? It's reversible. But it's a dietary disease, therefore you need to fix the diet. You can't use drugs. What they had mixed up was that they thought it was reversible by drugs, which it wasn't because it's a dietary disease. You have to reverse it with the diet.
So what is the best way to do intermittent fasting? Here's how Dr. Fung looks at it.
So you have to see how your body responds. Certainly the best way to start is to start by cutting out snacks, going to sort of 3 meals a day, trying to change those meals into sort of, less processed foods, less sugar. So that's a good start. And that gives you sort of that 12 to 14 hour fasting period every night. And then after that, then you can start to push it because remember that sort of balanced sort of 12 hours eating, 12 hours fasting is balanced, but it's not going to make you lose weight or, if you've gone too far in one direction, you have to push a little bit in the other direction. So sometimes you can do it with just a diet, which is fine. And sometimes, and they're complementary. That is, there's sort of two aspects to dietary treatments. One is that the foods that you eat, like what do you eat? That is completely different than how often you eat it. right? So and they have nothing to do with each other. So if you eat certain foods, you can eat them like 50 times a day or eat it once a day. It's completely a separate facet of your diet. So you have to attack both. So both the foods that you eat and how often you're eating are important. And I think that one of the ways to do that is then to start to stretch out that fasting period. So you can either drop breakfast or shrink your eating window. That's easiest from a behavioral standpoint because that fits into a schedule very easily. Cutting out dinner is usually a better strategy. So pushing that back earlier or dropping dinner altogether is very difficult from a social standpoint to do, but it's quite effective because, again, what you're trying to do is instead of putting food in, which is calories, which is energy, you're trying to let your body pull it out of your body fat and your blood sugar stores. So that's the easiest way to go. So then you can start to go to instead of 12 to 14 hours, try and push it to 16 hours. And do that consistently or semi-consistently. And then if you want to, you can try experiment with longer fasts. You could go 24 hours, you could go multiple days. Because again, the longer you go, the more powerful this will be. Although there tends to be a little bit more risk to it and it's a little harder and so on, but it's more powerful.
That was Dr. Jason Fung, a nephrologist from Toronto, Canada, and co-founder of the fasting method. Personally, I've done intermittent fasting last year and lost 20 pounds within a few months. I felt great, I felt more focused, and I felt like I had more energy. The hardest part was really the willpower that you need every day to say no to snacks. But you can start small. Just make a promise to yourself to stop snacking after 9 p.m., for example. Every couple of days, you can push back that time to 8 p.m., 7 p.m., and if you're comfortable with not having food after 6, then as long as you're having breakfast at 8 a.m. or later, you're giving yourself a 14-hour intermittent fasting window. And that's a great start. Also, if you're a lady, the fasting method recently released the Essential Guide to Intermittent Fasting for Women. It dispels common myths about women and fasting and is a great tool for taking control of your diet and your health. And it's written by Megan Ramis. She's a clinical researcher who reversed her own type 2 diabetes through fasting. So please share this video with a friend and let us know what you think in the comments below. Maybe you tried this before. This is Frontline Health. I'm Dan Skorbach. Stay healthy, America.